The loneliest people are usually the ones everyone envies. Rain slammed against the glass walls of downtown Seattle hard enough to blur the skyline into streaks of silver and white. 48 floors above the street, Victoria Sinclair stood alone beside the penthouse window with a crystal wine glass hanging loosely between her fingers. From a distance, she looked exactly like the woman people wrote about in magazines. Billionaire tech founder. Youngest female CEO in the Pacific Northwest to cross a $10 billion valuation. Elegant. Untouchable. Perfect. But Marcus Hale noticed something the cameras never would. Her shoulders were shaking. He stood across the street beneath the awning of the parking garage where he'd just finished checking the electrical panel for the third time that night. His dark hoodie was damp from the storm. One hand rested inside his jacket pocket, while the other held a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold an hour ago. He should have gone home by now. Ava would be asleep on the couch again with cartoons still playing softly in the background, because she always tried to wait up for him on Thursdays. Marcus glanced at the time on his phone. 1:12 a.m. too late. His sister had probably already texted twice asking where he was. But something about the woman standing alone in that penthouse window kept pulling his attention back. Victoria moved suddenly. Not dramatically. Just enough for the silk sleeve of her oversized white shirt to slide slightly down one shoulder as she lifted the wine glass toward her lips. The city lights reflected against the window behind her, wrapping her silhouette in gold and rainwater. Beautiful, but tired. The kind of tired that sleep never fixes. Marcus looked away first. He wasn't the kind of man who stared at women through windows. Especially not women like Victoria Sinclair. Women like her existed in a different universe. Men in $1,000 suits followed her through hotel lobbies. Reporters waited outside restaurants hoping she'd glance their direction. Entire companies panicked when she walked into boardrooms. And Marcus? Marcus fixed broken elevators and electrical systems across downtown buildings while trying to remember if his daughter needed milk for school tomorrow morning. Different worlds. Different gravity. His radio crackled suddenly against his belt. Maintenance response needed at Sinclair Tower. VIP elevator access issue. Marcus stared upward automatically. 48 floors above the storm, Victoria was still standing there. Alone. Another burst of static followed. Priority call. Marcus exhaled slowly and tossed the cold coffee into a nearby trash can. Copy that, he answered quietly. 5 minutes later, the lobby of Sinclair Tower glowed with polished marble, soft jazz music, and the kind of money that made people lower their voices without realizing it. Marcus stepped out of the service elevator carrying a black tool case, while rainwater still dripped from the shoulders of his jacket. The night concierge barely looked at him before speaking fast into an earpiece. Penthouse elevator stalled between 47 and 48. Marcus nodded once. Anyone inside? The concierge hesitated. Ms. Sinclair. Something tightened in the air after that. Marcus noticed immediately. Fear. Not for the elevator. For her. He walked toward the private access hallway without another word. The emergency lights overhead cast soft red reflections across the black marble floor while thunder rolled somewhere above the building. The private elevator doors were partially open when Marcus arrived. Just enough to reveal darkness inside. He set down the tool case quietly and pressed the manual override. Metal groaned softly. The door slid wider. And there she was. Victoria Sinclair stood inside the stalled elevator barefoot, one hand gripping the rail behind her while the other pressed tightly against her chest like she was trying to steady her breathing. Her white shirt was wrinkled now. A few damp strands of blonde hair clung near her cheek. The emergency lighting painted soft crimson shadows across her skin, and for the first time since Marcus had ever seen her face on television, she looked small. Not weak. Not fragile. Just alone. Victoria looked up the second she heard the doors move. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. Then Marcus noticed. It. The fear she was trying desperately to hide. And before either of them said a single word, the elevator lights flickered once, then went completely dark. Darkness changed the elevator instantly. The soft red emergency lights disappeared. The low mechanical hum died with them. For one heavy second, the only sound left was rain hammering against the building somewhere far above them. Then Marcus heard it. Victoria Sinclair trying not to panic. Her breathing came fast now. Sharp. Controlled for half a second at a time before slipping again. Marcus stayed still inside the doorway, one hand resting against the elevator frame while his eyes adjusted to the dark. "Backup lights should kick in soon," he said calmly. His voice stayed low on purpose. "Steady." Victoria did not answer immediately. He could barely see her silhouette now, just the faint outline of her standing against the back wall of the elevator. Another crack of thunder rolled across downtown Seattle. The building trembled slightly beneath it. Then he heard the soft sound of glass hitting metal. Her wine glass, shaking in her hand. "Miss Sinclair." Silence. Then finally, quietly, "Do not close the doors." Marcus glanced toward the control panel. "I am not planning to." "Good." But the word came out thinner than she probably intended. Marcus crouched beside the override box near the floor and pulled a flashlight from his tool bag. A narrow beam of soft white light cut through the darkness carefully instead of flooding the space all at once. Victoria blinked against the sudden light. Her makeup was almost gone around her eyes now. Not ruined, just tired. Human. The expensive white shirt she wore hung loosely against one shoulder, slightly wrinkled like she had been wearing it for hours. Bare feet against black marble flooring. One heel abandoned somewhere deeper inside the elevator. Marcus noticed everything automatically. Years in the military had trained him to read rooms fast. Read breathing. Read tension. Read danger. Victoria was not afraid of the elevator. She was afraid of being trapped inside it alone. "How long?" he asked quietly while checking the panel wiring. "How long what? How long have elevators bothered you?" Victoria looked away toward the dark hallway outside the doors. "Since Chicago." Marcus waited. She did not continue. He did not push. Silence stretched between them while rain lashed the glass exterior of the building. Somewhere far below, sirens echoed faintly through downtown traffic. Marcus loosened 2 screws from the access panel carefully. "You work maintenance?" she asked suddenly. "Electrical systems mostly." At 1:30 in the morning, things break at inconvenient hours. That earned the smallest reaction from her. Not quite a smile. More like the memory of one. Marcus kept working. "You always this calm?" she asked after another minute. He shrugged slightly. "My daughter says I talk like thunderstorms do not bother me." "Do they?" "Not anymore." Victoria looked at him then. Really looked this time. The flashlight resting beside him cast soft light upward across his face and shoulders. Strong hands. Controlled movements. No wasted energy. No nervousness around her. Most men changed around Victoria Sinclair. Tried too hard. Smiled too quickly. Wanted something. Marcus Hale acted like she was simply another exhausted person having a bad night. And somehow that unsettled her more than attention ever had. The elevator flickered once suddenly. A burst of dim red emergency lighting returned overhead. Victoria inhaled sharply at the sudden change. Marcus glanced up automatically. In that brief pulse of red light, he noticed something on the floor near her feet. A small orange prescription bottle. Half open. Victoria saw him notice it immediately. Her posture tightened at once. One hand moved toward the bottle too quickly, too defensive. Marcus looked away before she could hide it. He did not comment, did not ask questions. But something shifted quietly inside the elevator after that. Victoria stared at him for another long second. Then softly, almost suspiciously, she asked, "You are not going to pretend you did not see that?" Marcus tightened the final screw back into place and stood slowly. "People get tired." Another silence followed. Heavy this time. Personal. Victoria lowered her eyes toward the floor for half a second, before speaking again. "You have no idea." Then the elevator lights flickered once more. And this time, instead of stepping away from him, she moved slightly closer. The elevator finally jolted once before settling back into place with a low mechanical groan. Marcus stepped away from the control panel slowly, listening to the system reset itself through the walls. The emergency lights above them steadied into a dim crimson glow that softened the sharp edges of the elevator interior. Victoria remained near the back rail, arms folded lightly across herself now, like she had suddenly become aware of how exposed she looked. Marcus picked up the orange prescription bottle from the floor carefully and handed it toward her without comment. Victoria hesitated before taking it. Their fingers brushed for less than a second. Warm skin, cold hands. She slipped the bottle into the pocket of her oversized shirt almost immediately. "Thank you," she said quietly. Marcus nodded once. No questions. No judgment. Somehow that made her more uncomfortable than questions would have. Most people always wanted explanations from her. Investors. Journalists. Men she dated. Everybody wanted access to Victoria Sinclair, the billionaire. Nobody ever seemed interested in Victoria Sinclair, the exhausted woman standing barefoot inside a broken elevator at nearly 2 in the morning. Marcus checked his watch. System should reboot in a minute or two. Victoria leaned her head back lightly against the mirrored wall behind her. And if it does not, then I manually open the car at the nearest floor. You say that like this happens all the time. Because it does. That almost smile appeared again. Small. Tired. Gone too fast. Thunder rolled outside the tower once more, softer now, but constant. Seattle rain covered the glass skyline in silver streaks that moved like rivers against the city lights. Marcus glanced upward briefly toward the emergency hatch above them. Storm probably overloaded one of the external circuits. You always know how to fix things? Victoria asked. Marcus shrugged slightly. Not everything. The answer stayed between them longer than either expected. Victoria studied him. Quietly under the red emergency glow. He was taller up close than she realized. Broad shoulders beneath a rain-soaked black jacket. Calm eyes. The kind of face that looked more comfortable listening than talking. Most men filled silence because silence made them nervous. Marcus seemed perfectly fine inside it. Victoria noticed that immediately. You have a daughter, she said after a moment. Marcus looked toward her again. How did you know? You mentioned her. Right. Another brief silence. Victoria tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear slowly. How old? 7. What is her name? Ava. Something softened across Victoria's expression at that. Barely visible. That is a pretty name. Marcus nodded once. She picked our goldfish's name too. Victoria blinked. Your daughter named a fish? Captain Pancake. For the first time that night, Victoria laughed for real. It slipped out unexpectedly before she could stop it. Soft. Breathless. Human. Marcus looked slightly surprised himself. It was apparently very important to her. Victoria shook her head slowly, still smiling faintly now. Captain Pancake. He lasted 4 days. That sounds about right. The tension inside the elevator shifted quietly after that. Not gone. Just different. Less sharp around the edges. Victoria looked down toward the marble floor between them. I do not think I have laughed all week. Marcus rested one hand lightly against his tool case. Long week. Victoria let out a slow breath through her nose. Long year. Marcus noticed the way her voice changed on the last word. He did not ask about it. But Victoria noticed that too. The absence of pressure. The absence of curiosity disguised as concern. Marcus Hale never pushed. And somehow that made her want to keep talking anyway. The elevator lights suddenly brightened overhead as full power surged back through the system. A soft chime echoed through the car. The doors behind Marcus slid open smoothly onto the 48th floor penthouse hallway. Warm golden light spilled across the marble floor outside. Marcus picked up his tool case automatically. You are good to go. Victoria looked past him toward the open hallway, but did not move immediately. Rain continued tapping softly against the distant penthouse windows somewhere beyond the corridor. Marcus waited politely for her to step out first. Instead, Victoria looked back at him with an expression he could not fully read yet. Tired, guarded, curious. You know, she said quietly, most people talk too much when they are nervous around me. Marcus adjusted his grip on the tool case. Maybe I am just tired too. Victoria stared at him another second, then finally stepped forward barefoot into the hallway. But as Marcus turned slightly toward the elevator controls, he heard her voice stop him again. Marcus. He looked back. Victoria hesitated for the first time since he met her. Then softly, almost like she was surprising herself by asking, she said, would you mind walking me to the penthouse door? Marcus should have said no. The elevator was working again. His job was finished. Normal people walked away after that. But something in Victoria Sinclair's voice stopped him before the word could form. Not weakness. Not fear exactly. Just exhaustion deep enough that it sounded honest. Marcus adjusted his grip on the tool case and gave a small nod. Sure. Victoria exhaled slowly like she had been holding her breath waiting for the answer. Then she turned barefoot toward the penthouse hallway without another word. The corridor stretched long and quiet beneath soft amber lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined one side of the hallway, revealing rain-soaked Seattle below them. 48 floors down, traffic lights blurred into ribbons of red and gold through the storm. Marcus walked half a step behind her naturally. Not crowding, not distant either. Victoria noticed that immediately. Most men either hovered too close around her or stayed awkwardly far away like they were intimidated by the air she breathed. Marcus simply matched her pace. Calm. Steady. The soft fabric of her oversized white shirt shifted gently as she walked. Expensive material. Thin enough to move with every step. But there was nothing performative about her tonight. No cameras. No boardrooms. No polished billionaire image. Just a tired woman moving slowly. Through an empty penthouse hallway at nearly 2 in the morning while thunder rolled outside the building. Halfway down the corridor, Victoria suddenly stopped near the windows. Marcus slowed automatically beside her. Below them, lightning flashed across Elliott Bay in pale silver streaks. The storm looked endless from up here. I used to love storms, Victoria said quietly while staring out over the city. Marcus leaned lightly against the wall beside the glass. Used to. She nodded faintly. Chicago changed that. Marcus glanced toward her but stayed silent. Victoria folded her arms loosely against herself. 5 years ago I got stuck in an elevator during a blackout downtown. Her voice remained calm, but Marcus noticed her fingers tighten slightly against her sleeves. 6 hours. No lights. No air conditioning. Just emergency alarms going off over and over. Rain tapped softly against the massive windows beside them. Someone was with me, she continued after a second. My fiancé at the time. Marcus said nothing. Victoria let out a small breath that almost sounded amused. He left me there after the rescue team arrived. Marcus frowned slightly. Left. The second the doors opened. Another faint laugh. Bitter this time. Said he could not deal with panic attacks for the rest of his life. Silence settled quietly between them. Marcus watched the storm outside while processing the image in his head. The richest woman in Seattle trapped in darkness, while someone she trusted walked away the moment things became inconvenient. Somehow it explained more than she probably realized. That was the last serious relationship I had, Victoria said softly. People think money makes loneliness easier. Marcus finally looked toward her fully now. Does it? Victoria met his eyes for the first time since they stopped walking. Red emergency reflections from the hallway lights softened her features in the glass beside them. No, she admitted. It just makes the house bigger. That one stayed with him. Marcus looked past her toward the distant city lights again. Somewhere at home, Ava was probably asleep sideways across the couch with cartoons still running softly in the background. Small apartment. Too many bills. Broken kitchen drawer he kept forgetting to fix. But never quiet in the wrong way. Never empty like this. Victoria pushed a hand lightly through her hair before starting toward the penthouse doors again. This time Marcus noticed the slight fatigue in her movements more clearly. The storm, the pills, the elevator, whatever else she was carrying tonight sat heavier on her shoulders than the billionaire image ever showed. They reached the private penthouse entrance a few seconds later. Massive black double doors. Fingerprint scanner glowing softly beside them. Victoria rested her hand near the sensor but did not activate it immediately. Instead, she looked toward Marcus again. You know something strange? What? I do not feel anxious when you are around. Marcus blinked once at the honesty in her voice. Victoria seemed surprised she said it out loud too. The corner of her mouth curved faintly like she regretted admitting it. Then suddenly her phone vibrated inside the pocket of her shirt. The screen lit briefly in the dark hallway. Marcus caught only one word before she turned it over face down. Daniel. Victoria's expression changed instantly after seeing the name. Not anger. Something colder. Tired disappointment. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. She ignored it both times. Marcus noticed her hand trembling slightly afterward. Victoria pressed her thumb against the scanner at last. The penthouse doors unlocked with a soft click. Warm light spilled across the hallway behind her. She stepped halfway inside, then paused unexpectedly. Rain continued whispering against the windows around them, while the city glowed beneath the storm. Victoria looked at Marcus carefully for one long second before speaking again. Would it be strange if I asked you not to leave yet? Marcus looked at Victoria for a second longer than usual. Not because of the question itself. Because of the way she asked it. Quietly. Carefully. Like she already expected him to say no. Rain rolled against the penthouse windows behind her while warm amber light spilled from the open doorway across the marble floor. Somewhere deep inside the apartment. Soft jazz played low enough to almost disappear beneath the storm. Marcus adjusted the strap of his tool bag on his shoulder. You expecting someone? Victoria let out a short breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Not anymore. Her phone buzzed again inside the pocket of her oversized shirt. She ignored it immediately this time, without even checking the screen. Marcus noticed that too. He noticed everything. Victoria stepped farther inside the penthouse and pushed one side of the dark blonde hair away from her face. It is stupid, she admitted quietly. The storm just, she stopped herself before finishing. Marcus waited. After a second, she shook her head once. Never mind. He glanced back toward the elevator hallway behind him. Empty. Quiet. Then toward the city windows stretching across the penthouse interior. Seattle looked distant from up here. Small. Unreal beneath the rain. Marcus finally nodded once. For a few minutes. Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly at the answer before she could hide it. Thank you. The penthouse felt warmer than the hallway. Softer too. Not flashy the way Marcus expected billionaire apartments to feel. No gold sculptures or giant crystal chandeliers. Just dark wood floors, oversized cream-colored furniture, shelves lined with books, and floor-to-ceiling windows wrapping around nearly the entire living room. The city lights reflected softly against the glass while rainwater streaked downward in silver lines. Marcus stepped inside slowly, careful not to drip water everywhere from his jacket. Victoria disappeared briefly toward the kitchen before returning a moment later carrying a folded towel. You are getting rainwater on my imported floors, she said lightly while handing it toward him. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That sounds expensive. It is. But this time the small smile stayed a little longer. Marcus dried his hands automatically before setting the towel aside near the kitchen counter. Victoria moved around the penthouse differently now than she had in the hallway. Slower. Less guarded somehow. She kicked off her remaining heel near the couch, without seeming to notice she did it. Barefoot again. Human again. Marcus stood near the windows while Victoria crossed toward the kitchen island. The oversized white shirt she wore shifted softly with each movement beneath the warm apartment lighting. She opened the refrigerator, stared inside for a second too long, then closed it again without taking anything out. Marcus noticed that too. You hungry? He asked. Victoria leaned one hip lightly against the marble counter. I forgot to eat dinner. That explains the headache. She blinked once. How did you know I had a headache? Marcus shrugged slightly. You keep rubbing the same spot near your temple every 30 seconds. Victoria stared at him quietly after that. The storm flashed silver across the windows behind him. You always pay attention like this? She asked softly. Marcus looked toward the rain outside. Comes from raising a kid alone. Something shifted behind Victoria's eyes at the word alone. She folded her arms loosely against herself again. Her mother? Marcus stayed quiet for a moment. Lives in Portland now. Victoria nodded slowly like she understood not to ask more. Another silence settled between them. Comfortable this time. Not empty. Marcus glanced around the penthouse once more. Big place. Victoria followed his gaze toward the dark hallway leading deeper into the apartment. Too big. Marcus looked back toward her. She stood beneath the soft kitchen lighting now, oversized white fabric slipping slightly near one shoulder again, arms wrapped loosely around herself despite the warmth inside the apartment. Beautiful woman. Billion-dollar company. 48 floors above the city. And somehow the loneliest person Marcus had seen in a long time. Victoria looked down briefly before speaking again. Do you ever notice how quiet expensive places are? Marcus leaned lightly against the window beside him. I notice. Her eyes lifted toward him slowly. I hate it sometimes. Outside, thunder rolled low across Seattle again. The lights inside the penthouse flickered once. Then again. Victoria's expression changed immediately at the second flicker. Small. Fast. But Marcus caught it. Her fingers tightened slightly against her arms. Marcus noticed before she even spoke. Power might dip again, he said calmly. Victoria gave a faint nod. That is what I was afraid of. The lights flickered a third time. Longer now. The jazz music cut out completely. And 1 second later, the entire penthouse went dark. Darkness swallowed the penthouse so completely that for 1 second neither of them moved. The city outside vanished behind black glass and rain. The low hum of expensive appliances disappeared. Even the air itself felt different without power running through the walls. Then thunder rolled across the skyline again, deep enough to vibrate faintly beneath the floorboards. Marcus heard Victoria inhale sharply from somewhere near the kitchen island. Not dramatic. Not loud. just fast enough for him to recognize it immediately. Panic trying to climb back up her throat. Backup generator should activate, he said calmly into the dark. Silence answered him for 2 long seconds. Then Victoria's voice came quietly from a few feet away. It usually does. Marcus pulled the flashlight from his tool bag again and clicked it on. A soft beam of light spread across the kitchen slowly instead of all at once. Victoria stood exactly where he expected, one hand gripping the edge of the marble counter. The oversized white shirt she wore caught the flashlight softly, thin fabric glowing pale against the darkness around her. Her blonde hair fell loose now around her shoulders, slightly messy from the storm and the long night. She looked tired in a way makeup could not hide anymore. Human in a way magazine covers never showed. Marcus glanced upward toward the ceiling vents. No generator hum yet. Building must still be rebooting, he said. Victoria nodded once, but kept her eyes on the flashlight instead of him. Marcus noticed her breathing still slightly uneven. You okay? He asked quietly. She gave the automatic answer first. I am fine. Marcus leaned lightly against the kitchen counter. You do not sound fine. Victoria let out a small breath through her nose. Somewhere outside, lightning flashed briefly through the windows, illuminating the apartment in cold silver for less than a second. Then darkness returned. I hate when the lights go out, she admitted finally. Marcus rested the flashlight carefully on the counter so the beam angled upward softly instead of directly at her face. I know. Victoria looked toward him immediately after that. How? Marcus shrugged once. You stop breathing normally every time the room gets dark. Silence settled quietly between them again. Victoria lowered her eyes toward the marble floor for a second before speaking. That obvious? To me. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Marcus did not say things dramatically. He just noticed things. And somehow that felt more intimate than compliments ever had. Victoria crossed slowly toward the windows overlooking the city. The flashlight glow followed her softly across the room. Rain streaked down the glass in endless silver rivers, while distant lightning flickered somewhere over the bay. You know the worst part about panic attacks? She asked quietly while staring outside. Marcus stayed where he was. What? Victoria folded her arms loosely against herself. You know it is irrational while it is happening. Another flash of lightning illuminated her reflection faintly against the glass. Your brain tells you nothing is wrong. She swallowed slowly. But your body acts like you are trapped underwater. Marcus watched her silently for a second before speaking. How long since you slept properly? Victoria laughed softly without humor. That obvious too? You look exhausted. She leaned her forehead lightly against the cool window glass. 3 years. Marcus frowned slightly. 3 years. On and off. Her voice softened further. Mostly off. Rain continued whispering against the windows around them. The flashlight cast warm shadows across the kitchen behind Marcus. Somewhere deep in the building, emergency systems clicked faintly through the walls. Victoria stayed facing the skyline while speaking again. Sometimes I drive around downtown at night, just so I do not have to come back here. Marcus glanced slowly around the massive penthouse. Beautiful apartment. Expensive art. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city. And absolutely no warmth inside it. Big place to be alone in, he said quietly. Victoria closed her eyes briefly at that. Yeah. The word barely came out above a whisper. Marcus looked toward the dark hallway leading deeper into the apartment, then back toward her standing alone beside the windows. You got candles? Victoria blinked slightly at the random question before nodding. Kitchen drawer beside the stove. Marcus opened the drawer carefully and found 3 expensive white candles along with a lighter. A few seconds later, soft golden candlelight flickered across the penthouse, replacing the harsh darkness with something quieter. Softer. Victoria watched him from the windows while the warm glow moved gently across his face and shoulders. Strong hands. Slow movements. No rush. No tension. Like darkness did not scare him at all. Marcus lit the final candle near the kitchen island and stepped back slightly. The apartment felt different immediately. Smaller somehow. Safer. Victoria stared at the candlelight for a long second before speaking again. You are strangely good at this. Marcus looked toward her. At what? Her eyes met his across the room, while thunder rolled softly outside again, making things feel calm. Victoria looked away first after saying it. Not embarrassed exactly. More unsettled by her own honesty. The candlelight flickered softly across the penthouse walls while rain continued sliding down the windows in silver streaks. Marcus leaned against the kitchen counter beside the candles, arms relaxed, watching the storm without seeming bothered by it at all. Victoria noticed that too. Men usually filled silence around her. They talked too much, tried too hard, wanted reactions, validation, attention. Marcus Hale simply existed inside the room calmly, like he had nothing to prove. And somehow that made the apartment feel less empty. Victoria crossed slowly toward the kitchen island and sat down on one of the high stools. The oversized white shirt slipped lower against one shoulder as she tucked one leg beneath herself unconsciously. Candlelight softened the sharpness of her features now. Without the penthouse lighting and polished public image around her, she looked younger somehow, tired in a real way. Marcus glanced toward her. "You should probably eat something." Victoria let out a faint breath of amusement. That sounded dangerously close to caring. Low blood sugar makes anxiety worse. So does being trapped 48 floors above Seattle in a blackout. Marcus nodded once. Fair point. Victoria opened one of the kitchen drawers and pulled out a small package of crackers before setting it on the counter between them. Luxury dining, she said quietly. Marcus looked at the crackers. My daughter would approve. That earned another small smile from her. Softer this time. Captain Pancake? Captain Pancake had standards. Victoria laughed again under her breath, shaking her head slowly. The sound lingered in the room longer than before. Natural now, less guarded. She opened the package and ate half a cracker before stopping midway through the second. Marcus noticed immediately. Nauseous. Victoria frowned slightly. How do you keep doing that? Doing what? Reading me like some kind of human weather report. Marcus shrugged lightly. Single parenting. He rested one hand near the candles on the counter. You learn to notice things before kids say them out loud. Victoria stared at him quietly for a second. That sounds exhausting. Sometimes. He paused briefly. Worth it, though. Something changed in her expression again after that word. Worth it. Like maybe she had not heard someone say that about another human being in a very long time. Outside, lightning flashed softly beyond the windows. The penthouse remained dark except for candlelight now. Warm gold shadows moved gently across the kitchen walls every time the flames flickered. Victoria looked down toward the marble counter while turning the untouched cracker slowly between her fingers. Do you know what the weird part is? She asked quietly. Marcus waited. I built all of this because I thought eventually it would feel like safety. Her eyes lifted slowly toward the empty penthouse around them. The company, the money, the apartment. She gave a faint shake of her head. But most nights it just feels, she stopped herself. Empty. Marcus finished softly. Victoria looked at him immediately. Yeah. Silence. Settled again. But not uncomfortable silence. The kind that felt heavy because both people understood something without needing to explain it fully. Marcus glanced toward the dark hallway deeper inside the penthouse. You always here alone? Victoria leaned back slightly against the stool. Mostly. Friends. She laughed quietly. People like being around billionaires. Her voice softened after that. That is not the same thing. Marcus nodded once. He understood more than she probably realized. Different worlds. Same loneliness. Victoria studied him carefully across the candlelight. You know something strange? What? I cannot remember the last time someone sat in this apartment without asking me for something. Marcus looked down briefly toward the candles before answering. I already got paid. That surprised another real laugh out of her. Short, warm, honest. Victoria covered part of her face with one hand afterward like she had forgotten how natural laughing could feel. Marcus watched quietly while the candlelight moved softly across her features. No makeup perfection anymore. No billionaire armor. Just a woman slowly lowering her guard one piece at a time. Then suddenly Victoria's phone buzzed again across the kitchen counter. The bright screen illuminated the dark room briefly. Daniel calling. Victoria's expression closed instantly the second she saw the name. The warmth disappeared from her eyes almost fast enough to hurt. Marcus looked away automatically to give her privacy. But before the phone stopped vibrating, he heard her whisper something under her breath, so softly, she probably did not realize she said it out loud. Please stop calling me tonight. The room fell silent again after that except for rain against the glass. Victoria stared down at the glowing screen for a long moment without answering. Then finally she flipped the phone face down beside the candles. Her hand trembled slightly afterward. Marcus noticed that too. Of course he did. Victoria swallowed once before speaking again. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus looked toward her calmly. Depends. She hesitated. The candlelight reflected softly in her eyes now, while thunder rolled somewhere far beyond the skyline. How do you stay calm when everything feels like it is falling apart? Victoria's question stayed between them quietly while rain whispered against the windows. Marcus looked down at the candle flames moving softly across the marble countertop before answering. I do not think calm is the right word. Victoria rested both arms lightly on the kitchen island now, watching him carefully across the candlelight. Then what is it? Marcus thought about it for a second. Routine. Victoria frowned slightly. Routine. He nodded once. When Ava was a baby, she used to wake up screaming every night after thunderstorms. His voice stayed low and even. At first I panicked every time because I did not know what I was doing. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth briefly. Then eventually I figured out she just needed the same thing every time. Victoria stayed completely still, listening. Warm bottle, blanket, cartoons playing low in the background. Marcus shrugged lightly. Nothing magic, just consistency. The candlelight reflected softly across Victoria's eyes now. And it worked. Most nights. Another silence settled between them. Comfortable now. Almost intimate in the quietest possible way. Victoria looked down toward her hands resting on the counter. Nobody ever stayed consistent with me. The honesty in her voice landed heavier than she probably intended. Marcus looked toward her slowly. Victoria let out a faint breath through her nose before continuing. My father loved business more than people. Her fingers traced slowly along the edge of the marble countertop. My mother loved appearances more than honesty. She gave a soft laugh without humor. And Daniel. Her expression tightened slightly at the name. Daniel loved the version of me that looked good beside him. Rain rolled harder against the windows now. Candlelight flickered softly between them, while the rest of the penthouse stayed wrapped in darkness. Marcus noticed Victoria pulling lightly at the sleeve of her oversized shirt again. Small nervous habit. What happened? He asked quietly. Victoria looked toward the skyline instead of him. I had a panic attack at a charity event last year. Her voice lowered further. Hundreds of people there. Cameras everywhere. Marcus stayed silent. Daniel told me afterward that I embarrassed him. The words came out flat now. Practiced. Like she had repeated them enough times that they stopped sounding shocking to her. Marcus leaned back slightly against the counter beside the candles. That says more about him than you. Victoria laughed softly under her breath. You say things very simply. Usually simpler that way. She looked at him then. Really looked at him. Candlelight moved softly across Marcus's face while thunder rolled low outside the building. Calm eyes. Steady posture. No performance. No pity. Just quiet certainty. Victoria realized suddenly how long it had been since someone spoke to her without trying to gain something from the conversation. The realization unsettled her more than the storm. Her phone buzzed again suddenly beside the candles. Daniel calling. Marcus looked away automatically toward the windows this time, giving her space without making a show of it. Victoria stared at the screen for several long seconds while it vibrated against the marble countertop. Then finally she answered. What? Her voice sharpened instantly. Colder now. Defensive. Marcus stepped farther toward the windows, pretending to focus on the storm outside while the conversation stayed low behind him. I said stop calling me tonight. Silence. Victoria pressed one hand lightly against her forehead. No, I do not care if investors are asking questions. Another pause. Then let them wonder. Marcus kept his eyes on the skyline while rain blurred the city lights below. Victoria's voice cracked slightly on the next sentence before she controlled it again. I am tired, Daniel. Silence followed, long enough that Marcus could hear only rain and the faint sound of breathing through the phone speaker. Then Victoria spoke again, quieter this time. No, I do not want company tonight. Another silence. Marcus glanced back accidentally at the exact moment Victoria's eyes lifted toward him across the candlelight. Something changed in her expression then. Softened. Like she suddenly realized she did not want the man on the phone anywhere near this apartment tonight. Good night, Daniel. She ended the call immediately after that and set the phone face down beside the candles again. The room fell quiet once more. Victoria stayed staring at the dark screen for a few seconds before speaking softly, without looking up. He hates when I do not need him. Marcus watched her carefully. Do you? Victoria finally looked toward him again. Candlelight trembled softly between them while thunder rolled beyond the glass walls of the penthouse. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. I do not think I ever actually did. The storm finally began to soften around 3 in the morning. Rain still slid against the penthouse windows, but slower now. Quieter. Seattle's skyline slowly reappeared through the dark glass in blurred gold reflections and distant headlights. The candles on the kitchen island had burned halfway down, filling the apartment with warm amber light and the faint scent of vanilla. Victoria sat silently on the stool beside the counter, one hand loosely wrapped around a mug of tea she had barely touched. Marcus stood near the windows with his jacket draped over the back of a chair now, sleeves rolled slightly at the wrists. The apartment no longer felt cold with him inside it. Victoria noticed that hours ago, neither of them had said much after the phone call ended. They did not need to. The silence between them had changed sometime during the night. Softer now. Familiar in a strange way. Marcus checked his phone briefly. 3 missed texts from his sister. One photo from Ava asleep upside down on the couch with a blanket half on the floor beside her. Victoria noticed the slight smile that touched his face before he tucked the phone away again. Your daughter? She asked quietly. Marcus nodded once. She fell asleep waiting for me. Victoria looked down at the untouched tea in her hands. You should probably go home. The words sounded different from the way she meant them. Marcus heard that immediately. He glanced toward the storm outside. Roads are probably flooded anyway. Victoria looked toward him slowly after that. Candlelight flickered softly across her face while the oversized white shirt slipped slightly lower against one shoulder again. She looked exhausted now. Not glamorous exhaustion. Real exhaustion. The kind that made people honest. Can I tell you something embarrassing? She asked quietly. Marcus leaned lightly against the counter beside the candles. Depends how embarrassing. A faint smile crossed her lips before fading again. I do not think I can sleep tonight. Marcus stayed silent. Victoria lowered her eyes toward the steam rising from the tea. Every time I close my eyes lately, my chest starts tightening again. Rain whispered softly against the windows around them. It feels stupid saying it out loud. Does not sound stupid. Victoria laughed softly under her breath. That is because you are unusually kind for someone who fixes electrical systems. Marcus shrugged slightly. Occupational hazard. Another silence settled gently around them. Victoria looked toward the dark hallway leading deeper into the penthouse for several long seconds before speaking again. The guest room is down there. Marcus followed her gaze briefly. Looks expensive. It is. Probably safer than my couch. That earned another small laugh from her. But this time the laughter faded into something quieter afterward. Something uncertain. Victoria set the untouched tea down carefully beside the candles. Her fingers lingered near the warm ceramic mug a second too long before she finally looked up at him again. Marcus. Yeah. She hesitated. For the first time all night, Victoria Sinclair looked nervous around him. Not billionaire nervous. Human nervous. Candlelight trembled softly between them, while thunder rolled faintly somewhere far beyond the bay. Would it be strange if I asked you to stay a little longer? Marcus watched her carefully now. Victoria folded her arms lightly against herself before continuing. I know how this sounds. How does it sound? A faint breath escaped her. Like I am asking because I am afraid to be alone. Marcus stayed quiet for a second. Then softly, honestly, he answered, You are. Victoria looked down immediately after that. Not offended. Just seen too clearly. The room stayed silent except for rain sliding against the glass walls of the penthouse. Marcus stepped closer to the kitchen island slowly. Not too close. Never enough to pressure her. Just enough that the candlelight softened between them. Victoria's breathing slowed slightly the moment he moved nearer. Marcus noticed that too. Of course he did. Victoria stared at the candle flame for another few seconds before speaking again, quieter this time. You can sleep beside me. Marcus did not move. The words hung carefully in the air between them. Victoria swallowed once before adding softly, almost like she needed him to understand the real meaning behind it. Just tonight. Silence followed. Heavy. Intimate in the quietest possible way. Marcus looked at her for one long second while rain whispered against the windows around them. Victoria could not remember the last time asking someone to stay felt more vulnerable than taking off armor. Then finally Marcus nodded once. Calm. Gentle. No hesitation. Okay. Victoria closed her eyes briefly after hearing the answer. and for the first time all night, her shoulders relaxed like her body had finally stopped preparing for someone to leave.